Hi everyone. I recently turned 18, which I desperately wanted to, for the last few months. You see, my dad died when I was a little boy, 7 I think. I have a very faint memory of his. Then a few years later, my mom got married to my stepdad. I don't know why, but I never felt comfortable around him. He gave a very shady vibe. I always knew he was not the kind of man he had been portraying himself to be in front of my mom. I'm an introvert. More than talking, I like to observe people. That's how I concluded he was not the person he was playing. Initially, I tried to caution mom about him, but she snapped my feeling and asked me to put an effort to build a relationship with my new family. She thought I was just jealous. I was, but my concerns were also valid. He had a daughter, Martha, who was of my age. We didn't get along well for obvious reasons. She was a dumb brat. She threw tantrums at us from the moment we came to her house. There was one more thing that I hated about my mom's second wedding. It was we who had to make all the compromises. I mean, mom and I had to move to his place because his princess didn't want to leave her house. I was transferred to her school because it would be easier for them to pick up/drop both the kids at once. You know what happens to a new kid in a school. On top of that, Martha would gang up with other bullies and pick up on me. I told her to mom, but that didn't help. Mom dismissed it and said she would not interfere in the siblings matter. Plus I was bullied even more on the next day. But, thankfully it soon ended. I was good in maths, which kinda saved my ass as I helped other kids during recess. Soon I made friends and it got better for me. However, having her in the house was still horrible. I used to get mad at mom for overshowering her love for Martha. I hated it because Martha didn't reciprocate my mom's love, and on top of that, she would be mean to my mom. She would yell at her every now and then to not cross her boundaries. Eventually, I got distant from mom as she was more busy making relationships with her new husband and stepdaughter. During that phase, I got closer to my grandparents. They were quite well off. They had this big house with a pool and a huge garden. I used to spend most of my day off from school at my grandparents'. When Martha got to know about the pool, she tagged along with me. I hated it. I told my mom not to send Martha with me because we couldn't stand each other. She asked me to take this as a way of bonding with her. I said I didn't want to bond with her because she is a horrible person, but my mom would ask me to be a bigger person and initiate the goodness. I was just 4 months older than Martha, and yet my mom would ask me to compromise because apparently, I was her big brother. I was too small to rebel, so most of the time, I would have to suck it up. Martha was not attached to my grandparents. The only reason she wanted to go there was because of the pool. She was an evil kid and would always get away with her nuisance. Her dad pampered her to the core and my mom chose to look otherwise, but my grandparents were able to see through her cute dumbness. They would put her in place if she ever crossed her line. To my grandparents, I was the only one who was truly their family. It was natural for them to be protective of me. You see, my dad was the only child of my grandparents, so they didn't have to invest a lot in raising children. They had invested in some good properties over the years which compounded in their old age. They had an asset manager to handle everything because they were not capable of handling it on their own. My stepdad worked as an account manager in a private bank, so he had experience in handling money matters. My mom recommended him to my grandparents. Initially, they refused, but eventually, my stepdad was able to win their trust and my grandparents hired him to manage their assets. I was not happy with their decision to let stepdad manage their asset, but I was a young boy who would listen to me in money matters. He tried hard to impress my grandparents and put up a gentleman's mask. I was able to see through his acts. I just waited to turn 18 so that I could live my life on my own. However, when I was 17, my mom went with my grandparents for a month-long trip. It was supposed to be a family trip, but unfortunately, our high school test got postponed and we had to stay. Stepdad opted to stay and take care of us. I hated to have him in the house. He shows his true colors when mom is not around. My test was over in a week. To avoid seeing him around, I took up a part-time job at a grocery store. I came home only at the night. He tried to school me, asking where I had been spending my days. He said as my legal guardian, so he's entitled to watch over me. Legal guardian, my ass. I said mom is my legal guardian and she knows where I'm spending my days, so I don't need to tell you. He didn't like my assertiveness. However, my arrogance was short-lived because a week later, I got the news that my mom and my grandparents died in a car accident. I felt so horrible that I was unable to accept the truth. It took 2 days for their dead bodies to be shipped to our place. Every second of those days, I prayed they were different people and not them. They say denial is the first stage of grief. I was in denial that something this horrendous would happen to me. I was hoping that some miracle would happen and they would pop up and say that they were alive. I was in a different zone on those 2 days. I refused to accept that they were no more. My mother's side of the family came to support me, but I refused to accept anyone's condolences until I saw my family's lifeless bodies myself. I rushed to my room and locked up myself for days. I was angry at them for leaving me alone with this wicked man. I was angry at God, angry at my dad, angry at my mom, angry at my grandparents, as how could they? I just couldn't take that grief. My uncle helped me a lot in navigating through it. I was so grief-stricken that I couldn't speak a word at their funeral. Stepdad gave them an honorable farewell. The fact that all of them whom I thought to be family left together, and the worst part was they left to a man whom I hated the most. After the funeral, a lawyer approached me. I'd never met a lawyer before. My mom had no big assets. She did a normal job. She had a house that she had sold off before moving to stepdad's place. There were insurance money and all, but I was not too hopeful about it because of her profound love for stepdad and Martha. I was right. As per mom's will, 75% of the assets, which were her insurance and money left in the bank account, would go to my stepdad, and I get 25% of it. However, the real show began when the lawyer read out my grandfather's will. As per that, 20% would go to charity and the remaining 80% would be divided between me and mom. In case one of us died, their portion would go to the other one, and under unforeseen circumstances, if both of us died, the entire inheritance would go to charity. In this case, my mother's portion would be inherited by me, which made me the owner of 80% of the wealth. However, there was a clause that dictated I'd be able to have possession of the asset only after I turned 18. Until then, the asset would be controlled by my legal guardian, which was my mom. Now that my mother was not there, my legal guardian would ultimately be my stepdad, whether I like it or not. The responsibility of taking care of my grandparents' wealth took over my grief to an extent. On top of that, I had to deal with the greediness of my stepdad. So sorrow kinda took a back seat. Not to mention that my stepdad was not happy to see me becoming a millionaire overnight. His behavior towards me completely changed. He acted as the most caring person in the world. The same act which he used to put in front of my mother and grandparents. In the initial days, I used to be put up in my room. He would bring me food and soup and would knock on my door often to check on me. I was suspicious of his motive, but instead of confronting him directly, I waited for him to make the move. I knew he couldn't put up this act for a long time. Just a week after the funeral, he brings up the inheritance talks. He goes, "As you know, I used to handle your grandparents' assets. Sadly, they are no more. In order to continue my work, I would need you to sign those papers for approval." It was too overwhelming for me. I was scared that he would exploit my vulnerability. I had watched and read too much fiction where the main character loses everything by signing some unverified documents. So, I asked him if this document would be to rehire him as the asset manager. He was taken aback by my question. Maybe he didn't see that coming. He said, "Partly yes." I was like, "What's the whole thing?" He said I was too young to understand this. I insisted he made me understand, or else I wouldn't sign anything. He said these things were too complicated for a 17-year-old, but he would try the layman's explanation for my understanding. He said in the absence of my mom, he is my uncontested legal guardian. Fair enough. So, I should hand over the inheritance to him. Since he is experienced in money matters, he would not only keep it secure but also grow it for me. I clarified, "You want me to give you access to manage my money, right?" He replied, well, slightly different. To ease up the complexities, I would want you to transfer them into my name. I lost my mind. He had been hiding his greed under the wordy jargon, but when I broke it down for him, he had no other way than to admit his true intentions. I made it more evident to him that I understood everything. I asked, "So, you want to own my grandparents' wealth? Don't you?" He understood. He was caught off guard. "It's for your own good. I'll help it grow." I was like, "You could do it by being my manager. Why do you have to be an owner?" He said, "You're teenage. You are raging with hormones. Money is known to bring the worst out of a person. What if you get into the wrong company and empty your family's wealth? So it's better I safeguard it for you." I rolled my eyes and he said, "You know how women hunt for men for money. What if a girl traps you into marriage and then divorces you and takes away all your wealth for alimony? You are too naive for the cruel world out there." I took out my phone and searched for the law around prenup. He didn't realize I was able to see through his BS. He goes, "If you think you'll be able to dodge all these bullets, think about your relatives and friends who would try to manipulate you and exploit you for the money." I snapped at him, glad that brought this up. "If anyone who is manipulating me now, it's you. I'm not a fool to fall for your pretentious mask. You think me to be a dumbass just like your bimbo daughter, but mind you, I am not. I may be 17 and may not have experience in money matters, but I have the intelligence to differentiate between reality and a facade. So back off. You're not getting anything from here." He went away that day but tried to convince me again, but I put my foot down and said a big no. I'm not going to transfer any bit of the inheritance to him. Eventually, he turned bitter towards me. He started counting the favors he had done for me. He said he gave me food and shelter, married my mom, gave me his name, and loved me like his son. I said cut the crap. Still no from me. Slowly, the manipulations took the form of arguments and soon it got violent where both of us yelled at each other. One morning, it got so severe that he pushed me out of the house and locked me out. I saw terror in his eyes that day. I felt I was an inch closer to being physically harmed. I told my friend about this and he cautioned me. Though my stepdad is not gaining anything from my death, everything would go to charity, but what if he pulls off a foul play for the inheritance? Money is capable of bringing out the worst in people. The next day, when he was not at home, I came back, packed my stuff, and left. I have given my gadgets to my friend in exchange for letting me live with him for 4 months. Meanwhile, I told my stepdad that I was living with my maternal uncle in case he reported me missing. He texted me to be careful and not get manipulated and give away my wealth. However, on my 18th birthday, my maternal uncle did reach out to me asking about my well-being, but he didn't say anything about money. Then I visited my grandfather's lawyer, who initiated the transfer of assets in my name. He asked me to make a will to safeguard my interest. I have done that. The thing is, now that I legally own everything and my stepdad hopefully cannot pull tricks, would it be wise to hire him as the asset manager? I have a very limited understanding of all this. Besides, I'm prepping for my undergrad admission. I need someone to take care of my wealth. So, instead of hiring someone unknown, do I bet on my stepdad? Update: sorry for not updating this sooner. Been too busy juggling a lot of responsibilities. As I mentioned, I was living with my friend until I turned 18 and the asset was transferred to my name. My lawyer recommended an asset manager for me. I moved to my grandparents' house for a while, but the house was too big for me. So, I rented it out and I moved to a secured apartment. My stepdad was furious when I told him that I was firing him. He had been managing it until then. He tried manipulating me that the lawyer had a secret motive behind this recommendation. I still followed my instincts and hired a professional. Then I got to know why my stepdad was pushing so hard not to hire someone else. My account manager reported discrepancies in accounting. He hinted at the possibility of money laundering. When stepdad realized he would be uncovered, he filed a case to overturn the will to divert the attention. His case had no merit. He knew he would not win it, but it was done only to divert my attention from the money laundering case. However, I didn't lose my composure and sued him for fraud. A neutral and thorough investigation was ordered. Stepdad's laptop and tabs were seized, his bank account was frozen, and he was ordered not to leave the city until the investigation was over. It came out that stepdad had been embezzling funds from my grandparents' property. He lost both the lawsuits. His plea for overturning the will was thrown away on the first day of the hearing. For the money laundering suit filed by me, he tried his best to defend himself, but he could not. His shady activities were not new. He had been doing this ever since my grandparents hired him. After their death, he thought he got a free hand and whisked $150K in total through all assets. However, when he realized that I was not easy to manipulate, he tried to cover up and put back some money to fill the holes, but it was a huge gap to cover up. The court ordered him to pay all the money he had siphoned. He was heavily fined to trade off his prison time. Not only this, he was asked to pay me the court case charges. Whatever he received from Mom's will was gone in paying the fine and compensation. In the end, he was barely left with anything but a knee-deep debt. He ultimately had to sell his house to pay for the $150K money he had embezzled from my grandfather's property. I made everything sound so easy, but trust me, it was not. When I pressed him with a money laundering case, I had to face a lot of brunt from him. He tried all the tricks to back me. From manipulating me into thinking I wasn't capable enough to handle everything alone and that I needed a guardian over me, to guilt-tripping me that my mom would have been so hurt to know I sued her husband. He did it all. He was damn so good at it. At one point, I actually started questioning myself whether I really would be able to handle everything alone, or do I needed an arsenal with me. If none of these tricks worked, he tried to threaten me. For many days, I felt someone was following me. I got threatening notes pasted on my car window. I couldn't do anything because there was no evidence that it was him. When I confronted him, he gave an evil laugh and said maybe I should be alert. It's not new that people get killed for money. That was when I left my grandparents' house and shifted to an apartment. I felt unsafe in a big house. Apartment seemed a lot safer. Not only him, but his loser daughter also came behind me. She was not as smart as her dad, who did not leave a footprint of his threats. This dumb girl came directly to my door. She screamed at me for bringing them to the streets. I said, now you would understand how one feels to leave their house. Remember how you used to mock me as a kid when I cried because Mom sold our house? Karma is a bitch, you know. She called me names and I gave it back to her. She got so furious that she tried to punch me in the face. I dodged it and unleashed my dog on her. She left with bruises and wounds from the encounter with my dog. Dogs are damn faithful, lol. However, after the court gave the judgment in my favor, my lawyer asked me to get a restraining order against them with reference to the incidents happening to me, threat messages, etc. I managed to get a temporary restraining order for 6 months because they don't have a criminal history and there was no evidence except for Martha barging at my door. It's almost 4 months since all this ended. I have enrolled in an undergrad school. BTW, I'm pursuing law. I feel like I would need to know the law of the land to handle the wealth, so what better than saving the attorney's charges? I am also planning to take a crash course on investing in finance so that I understand what my account manager is up to. Now, I don't have any other option than to trust him blindly. In a nutshell, life got better. Thank you guys for all the empathy and love. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Friend wants to crash my romantic Japan trip with my fiancé, expects us to pay for her accommodation and everything else and won't take no for an answer. I, 22F, and my fiancé, 23M, are going on our first trip together. I'm really excited as this is my first time on a plane, and even leaving the state I've lived in my whole life. We've been planning for this trip since earlier this year, and we've gotten our tickets as well as accommodations. Altogether we've already spent about $4,500 on everything, which has been something we've been saving for as we're both college students. Our trip is in about a month, and in comes my friend, we'll call her Ashley, 22F, who's been my friend for about a year. She'd brought up going to Japan as well, kind of jokingly, when we told her about the trip. I didn't think she was serious, but then she brought it up a few more times, even saying that she had a family member she could stay with. She asked if she could spend some time during the days joining us on our adventures while this family member was at work. I was supportive of this idea, as I know this would be her first time to Japan as well, and I care about her. However, all of a sudden, she told me she wants to get the tickets but her family member no longer will have space for her to stay. She wants to know if she can stay in our accommodations and join us on our flight back home. I let her know that our accommodation has strict rules against having more than 2 people and there's only one small bed in this studio. She said she'd be fine sleeping anywhere on the floor or couch, etc. I told her that I'd feel more comfortable if we didn't chance a fee, or getting in trouble in general, as I really just want a comfortable stay. I tell her that we're still willing to spend time with her during the day, and I began sending her accommodations in her budget. I was hoping this would be enough. But instead she's just asking if we can cancel our accommodations and pay for larger accommodation that can have a bed for her as well. Mind you, she's not saying she will help us pay for the more expensive accommodation, or anything else for that matter. She simply just wants to stay with us and for us to pay for a different accommodation. It seems like no matter what I say, she just keeps trying to manipulate me into letting her stay with us. This is also hard cause I know my fiancé and I really wanted this to be a romantic trip for us both, as we likely won't be able to afford another for a few years as we finish school. I'm just stuck on what to say or do, and if I'm the asshole here. Should I be okay with my friend staying in our accommodation and joining in on our trip? Comments, IC_dinner_7969, screw that. She would be around you the entire trip. Every time you and he are making plans, she would want to make changes and expect accommodations for her and what she wants to do. Sure way to ruin your trip is to have a third wheel invite herself along. Tell her it's a big country, she's welcome to take her own trip but you're doing your own thing. Snoozeberry 91, NTA. This is a chance for you and your fiancé to take a once-in-a-lifetime trip together. Traveling to Japan is expensive. If you share accommodation, you would be giving up a lot of privacy you and your fiancé would have. Personally, I wouldn't have included Ashley in any of my plans, though that's just me. Your trip would go from a romantic getaway for you and your fiancé to a group trip with you, Ashley, and your fiancé. Be straight up with her. Tell her after careful thought, you've decided you and your fiancé don't want to share accommodation as you want your privacy. That you will still hang out with her for a couple of days. Though she will have to get her own accommodation. Look away please 510, NTA. How could someone be that dense? She said she would be fine on the floor, while you and your fiancé sleep in the bed. Holy shit, does she not see how much of an intrusion that is? Send her a picture of a tricycle with a slash through it. But seriously, I would say something like, listen, I really value our friendship, but I've been planning this trip for a long time. I've spent a lot of my hard-earned money on it, so that my fiancé and I can have a nice vacation, just the two of us. If you don't tell her she can't come, you will regret it. A lot. Even Enthusiasm 7223, can't people just tell the truth? Tell your friend it's romantic trip for two and that we cannot accommodate you because we want to be alone for romantic trip. If you are in Japan while we're there, we can make some time to hook up during the day, but at night we have plans. And they do not include a third. Just be honest, it's a romantic trip for two. Tell her it's your first trip together as a couple and you want it to be lovey-dovey and romantic. All the beating around the bush and wondering what to say gets old. Be the adult you are and actually use your words and tell her the truth. You don't be mean about it, but you don't want a third wheel and explain that to her in a nice and loving way. It's really simple. You're making this much harder than it needs to be. And to update, as I'm reading the comments, there's a lot saying that I should be upfront about it being a romantic trip. When I first told her about the trip, I did tell her this is basically going to be our honeymoon. I may have said it jokingly to her, but I did mean it. My fiancé and I have been talking about going to Japan since we got together 8 years ago. I thought this honeymoon comment, as well as me bringing up activities like making our anniversary cake at a shop in Kyoto, clearly set the tone in which I plan this trip to be. I do agree that I should re-clarify that this is a romantic trip, but I feel uneasy that she'd receive this well, as she shut down all my logical reasons. I was hesitant when she brought up spending some time with us, but I thought maybe it was just something nice to do. I get that's a romantic trip, but my fiancé was fine with it and supported her coming along on some of the more normal things like going to Universal, since it was only going to be a few days of our trip that she'd want to be with us. She originally said she'd only be in Japan a week, and she'd only need to be with us while her family members at work from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m.-ish. But now, things have changed, and she's saying it could be longer. I do have trouble with boundaries, and I always want to be the one helping people out when I can. But, as she has been pushing for the last few hours no matter what I say, I've been getting more upset. I just didn't know if I was being selfish towards a friend in need. Now, I can definitely see that this was probably the plan all along, and she isn't in a tight spot. She just wants to use us. This realization does hurt, as I thought we had gotten really close in our shared healthcare major, but I guess she really doesn't care about my feelings like I care about hers, cause ultimately I just didn't want to hurt her. She recently got dropped out of our major, so I thought she was just really sad and needed a pick-me-up.